Okay, so at the beginning of my research on the homelessness epidemic in America, I was extremely apprehensive. I did not want to only find data and statistics that I could not have a part in changing, but homelessness is much more than just that. I put a little overlook page just to kind of show y'all what we're looking at. I have five key details I want to hit on. First, being that that homelessness is the act of not having a consistent home. A lot of times when we think of homelessness, it is the people who are out on the streets who are asking for money, for food, for water, all these different things. But it can also mean the people that are house hopping from like friend's house, family's house, living in their cars. All these different things also play into homelessness, not just the people that we think of initially. I want to help y'all better understand homelessness in itself and how it can happen to anyone. I want to inform the audience on major issues and causes that play into homelessness. I also want to allow y'all to understand the true issue at hand that will come up later, but it's kind of like a cliffhanger kind of thing. I want to explain, lastly, where we should go in trying to make a day to day change and just overall what we should do when thinking about homelessness. First, we have to think about how do we even get these numbers that we think of when we look up homelessness, when we Google the statistics of where it's most prominent, least prominent, whatever. It's done in the two most popular ways. The first one being a point in time count. Both of these are extremely unreliable. This one is the worst, I believe. But everyone on a surveying team goes out one night and counts in the specific area how many homeless people that they can find. This is obviously extremely just unreliable, doesn't really take into account for the people who are jumping from house to house in their cars, etc. The second one is a Census Bureau. This one mainly focuses on people who have checked in at places like homeless shelters, soup kitchens, other places that they can track how many people actually come in day to day. Obviously, still very unreliable, as homelessness can change day to day, and we do not have a definite account of obviously who's homeless, and we do not know their names, their identities, and definitely not their stories of how they got there. Looks like a lot of words, but it's really not. Okay, there's four main details when you look into the main issues affecting homelessness. The first one is minimum wage and the housing influx. The poverty line of a family of three in America at the very lowest is 17,000 a year. Obviously not ideal, but minimum wage in the US is only $7.25. If someone were to work an average work week, which is 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, with no breaks or vacation, they would gross only about $15,080. This is already falling below the poverty level in America. So how's America giving out these jobs and it's not even enough to be sustainable? Um, Second bullet point underneath minimum wage and housing influx is about 44% of the homeless population do have jobs. The jobs just are not cutting it. So a lot of us will drive by homeless people and be thinking they just need to get a job. They did it to themselves, all these different things. It's not even a valid statement to make because most of them do kind of have jobs. It's almost half. And then third one is the people who live paycheck to paycheck are easily made homeless. This is normally not thought about when we think about the homeless population because we think that they maybe grew up in poverty, maybe they are addicts, mentally unstable. But a lot of people who live paycheck to paycheck find themselves becoming homeless whenever they have an issue in their family, such as a hospital bill that adds on to the normal wages that they can't even pay normally, but or like a death in the family that they have to pay for the funeral, etc., makes it completely um, unattainable for them. My second one and third one oops, are normally the two things that we like to pin being homeless on. It's mental health and addiction. By pinning these two things on homeless people, it makes it easier for us to not have to care about them as people because, again, they did it to themselves or they're crazy makes it a lot easier to not feel like we have to do something about it. Um, 77% of homeless people in America have experienced mental illness at some point in their lives. 67% of the homeless people in America report having some kind of mental illness as of today. Obviously, this is an overwhelming majority. Again, not everyone though, so we want to stay away from the generalization. Also, addiction. Most research shows that around 1/3 of people who are homeless have problems with alcohol and or drugs, and around 2/3 of these people have a lifetime history of drug or alcohol use disorder. Again, overwhelming majority, but not everyone. And the fourth and last one is disabilities. Roughly half of the people experiencing homelessness in America have some type of disability. This is a rate that's significantly higher than the general US population, which is just about 20%. So, with disabilities, obviously, we'll see some homeless people who are in wheelchairs, on crutches, maybe they're amputees. This obviously makes it a lot harder to work a normal job that would need you to have both legs, both arms, something like that. Okay. Notice the last slide was not called the causes of homelessness. What are the causes of homelessness, you may ask? Okay, so I watch a YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly. It is where the host, Mark Leda, brings in people off of Skid Row, which is a very impoverished area in California. And he listens to their stories and asks questions that a lot of us fail to even think about these people. So he'll ask them, like, what was your childhood like? Who were your role models growing up? So I believe, as he does, he's been interviewed on what he thinks about what we should do, where we should go from this. And we both believe that it is a lack of love, care, and role models shown at a young age. If you think about it, yes, mental illness and addiction, all that disabilities, they do play into being homeless, but the true cause is the lack of love and care and role models shown at a young age. He said, while being interviewed, hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent trying to fix these people that are broken. I don't even know if that will work. If you really want to make a difference, the way to do it is to think long term, maybe help their kids or their kids' kids by stabilizing households and poor communities throughout the country nationwide and worldwide. So that obviously shows we need to be able to help these kids as they grow up. We need to be able to bring them the love and care, and even like everyday items that we take for granted, we need to be able to bring that to them and try to bring them out of these impoverished areas, and even just showing them more love can really go a long way. It's a lot easier to help the kids who are very susceptible to change in their life. It's a lot easier to help them than people who have already had the addiction issues, the mental illnesses, etc. He also said introducing role models such as teachers, counselors, social workers, etc., into these children's lives is a huge deal. Mark says many people he interviews off the street were only shown gang members, dealers, pimps, etc. How do we expect these kids to grow and become things like doctors and teachers and be able to get off the streets whenever all they were shown growing up were just these things? Okay, story time. If you did not catch anything else, listen to this. This will be interesting. So basically, I have a friend who is in high school. She's basically our age. She does not go here, but she has two siblings and is now split up from these two siblings due to her mom being homeless, not being able to pay the bills. Her dad was never in the picture. I grew up playing club ball with her. She's a great girl, top of her class at a big 5A school, very smart. But she's now not living with either of her siblings. She hasn't known where her mom is in forever. She's had to move in with a random family that, by their own grace, has just taken her in. And she's not doing too well. But she only knows where her mom is at now because she's at a volleyball tournament, I want to say 2 weekends ago, and she got a call from the jail. And so now her mom is also incarcerated. So if y'all will, please pray for her, but also just be thinking about how she did not do anything to become homeless. She does fall under the category of being homeless. She does not have a consistent, stable house that she's living with her family, etc. So she does fall under that category. So if you are thinking all homeless people just do it to themselves and all this, again, not accurate, definitely not true. She does not deserve to be in a situation like that. and it could have happened to any of us if we were just born in a different family. Okay, for my biblical integration, I have four main verses that stick out to me. Luke 6:31 says, treat others just as you want to be treated. This seems like a very simple concept, but a lot of us still cannot seem to wrap our head around it. A lot of homeless people experience being spit on, peed on. A lot of sexual abuse is just prominent in this homeless community, and whether that is from people who do live in a house or the people who do not live in a house, just I mean, it goes either way. It shouldn't be happening. But all I think about whenever I see these people is how would I want to be treated if I were in their shoes? Would you want to be spit on, peed on, hit, etc., just because you simply don't have a roof over your head? Matthew 24:40 says, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. So not only does God obviously look down on the mistreatment of these people, he takes it personally, and he sees this as, these are my creation, these are my people just as much as you are. We should not be treating these people like this. We're doing it directly to God. Isaiah 58:7 says, is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see the naked to clothe them and to not turn away from your own flesh and blood? The part that sticks out to me the most in this is the flesh and blood part. They are people just like us. Like I said a few minutes ago, think about if you were born into a different house, into a different family, your story could look completely different. I want to say most of us were fortunate enough to not have to deal with things like this, but it could have easily been us too. And my last one is Luke 14:13 through 14 says, but when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. This sticks out to me too because at a school such as Southside Christian, we can get stuck in our bubbles. It's not a bad thing that we have been blessed in many ways, but it is very easy to not want to look out and think about these people who aren't as fortunate as us. Sometimes we'll even be gracious enough to give these homeless people food. But what do? Do you just hand them the food and walk away, say have a good day, maybe God bless? Or do you actually sit with them and talk to them and ask them questions like they're the normal human beings that they are? I mean, they just want to be treated like they're normal. And normally that doesn't happen. Okay. My last slide is how to make a day-to-day difference. A lot of y'all are probably wondering, where do we go from this? I put some easy ways up here. There's obviously more, but these are just the main things that I think of. You can volunteer at organizations like soup kitchens, give food and water to homeless people, especially if you're apprehensive to give money, because I mean, we did see that most of them are addicts and stuff like that. But again, just the food and the pure caring about them really goes a long way. You can donate food, clothes, feminine hygiene products, etc., to local shelters, and you can advocate for the lives and well-being of the homeless individuals. My last one is make posts on social media to spread awareness and act out what you post. That last one is probably the easiest one you can do. You don't even have to go anywhere to do it, like physically. But the ending part of that is one of the most vital things in this whole presentation. You can sure post a lot of things, say that you're doing stuff and act a certain way, but if you're not truly acting out what you're preaching and posting on, then, I mean, really, what good is that doing? Question time.
Yes. Or
Okay. Thanks. More.
come back. Okay. So, first of all, great job. It's one of those in a really important moment. Jesus told his disciples that you will always have the poor with you. That was a specific moment. Like, I don't want to overinterpret that passage because he was trying to get them to see, like, a woman was worshiping him, scolded her for worshiping him when she should have been giving to the poor. Huge cop out. He was calling him for that, right? Poor you will always have with you. You won't have me with you. But I also, like, if I can get some subtext to that, poverty, homelessness seems like one of those things that it's never not been the case that some people have less than what it takes just to survive. All year in class, we've been talking about flourishing, right? You use the word flourishing. Homelessness is like a textbook example of not flourishing, right? And I hope we've not. I don't think this needs explanation. I think it's good by way of comparison. It's possible to have every material possession and still not be flourishing. In fact, Jesus, on the other end of this thing, warns all these wealthy people, y'all better be careful, because it's almost like the more possessions you have, the less likely it is for you to make it to the kingdom of heaven. And that's a whole other conversation. But the poor you will always have with you, meaning this is always going to be something we ought to care about. Yes, I think this is one of those. We were joking around, like some teachers were asking this morning, well, who's presenting? Sophia is. What's it about? Homelessness. Oh, and by the way, she's against it. Sorry if you make weird jokes like that. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? Who wouldn't look at this case and be like, yeah, we should do more, we should care. And yet, in our own hearts, I wonder, I know me, this is me personally, I wonder how often I justify my inactivity. Stuff that you were very quick to hit on, like the causes and correlations behind all of this. We like to put it on the person. And individual responsibility is a thing. But to what extent do we use that to justify our own inactivity? That's the end of the story. You mentioned that there's this weird number that we've decided is a poverty line, right? What was it, like 20 something thousand?
It's like 17,000.
17,000.
It's like the absolute lowest it could be.
For a family of three. Yeah. So they just don't even think beyond that. Like there's no.
That's the most you can make without you technically being in poverty.
Got it.
Yeah.
Because I know it scales upward, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like a family of four. Like this is. I think this is significant because. For one person to be homeless, that's one person that's homeless. Mm-hmm. For a family to be homeless, it's not just three people being homeless, it's a mother and two children, right? Which changes the dynamic, I think, right? Because then you got to start thinking, well, how are those kids?
Right.
You know, and then when you consider a family of four needing, I can't imagine a family of three existing with $17,000 every year. Imagine a family of four, 20, and it scales upward. So that's something I think is so. Here's a question I got, and again, this is just seeing if you saw anything about this. Do you think why is that number so significant? Like, what's the point of having that particular number just set? Two, do you think that's an adequate place for that number?
No to the second one, because even though that is the poverty line, it's like that's still so unsustainable to live like an actual, like you were saying, a flourishing life. Like no one's gonna flourish if that's even hard to live a decent life with that being one person living off 17,000 a year. You know, that's adding kids into that as well. And then for the first one, I don't know why they drew the line there, but I mean the line does have to be drawn somewhere, and it makes it easy for if a family is making over that to be like, oh, they're not in poverty, and then they don't qualify for this, and this, you know, because the line does have to be drawn somewhere so they know when they need to pitch in and stuff, like the government. But I don't know why it's 17,000. I think it should definitely be higher. But
I just wonder because I like that you connected the two, that minimum wage.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody makes minimum wage, and I don't know, I didn't pay attention close enough to see if you took taxes out of that, but. Someone making minimum wage is still going to make less than that? Was that the conclusion?
Yeah, and that's like no vacations, no time off, no sick days. Yeah.
And then also compound, like, okay, so I'm not saying that anybody, like, please don't, I feel like I'm getting a little preachy, but that's right. The typical cop out, oh, they just need to get a job. You can't see all these help wanted signs around here. A friend of mine who spent a good portion of recent years homeless um, expressed to me one of the most difficult problems, one of the hardest things about getting a job, and God knows he's tried. What's the second thing you got to fill out on a job application? If you're homeless, what are you going to do, right? Not to mention the fact that you put an address down just to get the interview or whatever, and then okay, well now you're lying. So Christians, let's be careful lest we allow terrible ideas like that to start infecting how we treat people. Anyways, I got something else, but I'll stop. Yeah. Let me get an intermission real quick. Anybody got any feedback? Sophie?
Yeah. The kids more. I talked to PC a little bit about this. We talked about how Christians do a good job at like fostering and adopting and stuff like that, but we definitely do need to see more of it. I think that's the number one way we can help is if we truly believe in the Christian faith and all that, then we do need to be bringing more children into this safe environment, of like a Christian household. But that's obviously not easy for people that are our age. So, yeah, so obviously fostering and adopting, that would be best case scenario. But going into schools and helping out, I looked into that a little bit. I know even in these very impoverished areas, they have teachers and stuff like that, but it's not the best. It's not an education like we have here. So if you're I mean, I think you would have to have a license and stuff. Like, I'll probably end up doing it since I'm going into social work. But like, yeah, I don't think a random person can just go in. But and obviously, no one, not everyone is going to get a degree in social work and stuff like that. But if you see areas where you can help out, like, I mean, homeless shelters, they do have some kids, but I see what you're saying with it being mostly adult. Um, and even bouncing off of that, like they do help out. Like the homeless shelters, they do help out, and it's hard to meet people where they're at, in their life, and like by giving them free meals and stuff like that, it does help a lot. But yeah, for the kids, honestly, just like showing love to them and giving them maybe some toys, like donating to Goodwill and other places like that, instead of just like throwing them out, stuff like that, just simple things.
I'll throw in there too. Like that's one thing. Good observation. And maybe this is a positive. Maybe this is it's kind of like a whole different senior center organization. We have government programs for children. We have child protective services. We have foster care systems, and I know like we actually have some senior seminars on that coming up. But like that has its own world of problems, right? Bringing kids in because right, you don't want everybody, you don't want just anybody handling kids. But unfortunately, one of the big problems that they have with the foster care system, some I don't know this off the top of my head, but a significant number of kids that go through the foster care system end up being homeless because we have all these government programs all the way up until the moment they turn 18, their files are put in an archive somewhere. Yeah. You're on your own, and that again, that's kind of like a threshold into another project. 50 to 60% projects. Christian, yeah.
Well, the true definition is not having like a consistent home, but even with my friend, I would say, yeah, she doesn't have like a true consistent home. She has one that she goes home to, but her family isn't there. Her siblings are not there. Her parents are split. Obviously, it's like I don't consider that a home, even though she is living in that house like day to day. I do not consider that a home.
Question. I just want to did mention that even with
Mm.
and to live with, got back on our feet. Knows what could have happened more.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, like even with two college educated parents with jobs, still we found ourselves in that position.
right.
So I think the support structure.
Yeah, I agree with that because it really can happen to anyone. You take your house burning down or something like that. I mean, where do you even go from there? You know, like there's a lot of things that can happen in your life that can put you out on the streets and you just never thought that you'd be there. Like, yeah, that's a perfect example. I didn't know. I definitely add a lot to it, but I did not work into that. Yeah.
I had a similar question, not with immigration, but like with mental. Brought up all the mental illness and just a lot of crossroads, right, with
Mm-hmm.
different issues. But I appreciate that you distinguish between cause and effect. And again, like I don't even know how to formulate the question, but maybe you saw something that you could just mention. I can't imagine that if someone already had mental difficulties, addiction, whatever they're struggling with, I can't imagine homelessness would make that better. If anything, it just exacerbates the problem. So like you just get this downward spiral of a negative feedback that like the problems they had to begin with are now have probably pushed them in that direction now.
Yeah. Kind of going off of that, in California, obviously it's homelessness is extremely bad. But I watched a few people get interviewed, and some of the government will take these people from different cities and even like countrysides and be like, here, you. They give them a one-way ticket on a bus, train, whatever. They're like, you need to go here, and they send them to. I think it was San Antonio was a big. There's a big issue of homelessness, but they'll send them to these places and then they get overrun with homelessness and then it's like okay where do we even go from there, you know, it's just like a circular problem. But in California, I don't really know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but over 40% of their homeless population has now been put into housing, so that's like government housing, but it's helpful for them, but it's again it's the same people with the same problems. It's yeah, like the issues are still living in them, you know, and it makes it hard to see that too because these people aren't getting help for their mental illnesses and stuff like that for free. They're just strictly getting the housing, and so it's like they still have the addiction problems. How are they supposed to keep up with the house, you know? So that yeah, there's a lot of things that play into that. Sure. Yeah, yeah. I haven't looked into like Greenville specifically, but I would say that falls along the line of like the minimum wage and housing increases because I mean you can even look at like inflation and stuff and people who are living paycheck to paycheck and then their paycheck isn't going up with that, you know.
I
So,
know, sorry, but Brooke, on the Greenville thing, like I've heard people talk about a couple of social issues. There's like two or three social issues that Greenville is having a problem with, just because of our location between Charlotte. We're on this corridor between Charlotte and Atlanta that as people are getting through, we're a waypoint. And so if you can imagine like someone in a situation like this, how long is it going to take them to get from one city to another? Cities are places where like literally there are just parks. There are places that you can reside. There are people walking by that you can elicit help from. So that's why you see it gravitate more towards the city itself. But like Greenville just has as small town vibes as we have. Like we get this. There are a couple of issues that we have. Human trafficking is one of them.
I literally, yeah, me and Abigail were just talking about that today.
And then also like with all the foster care stuff we were mentioning, or like it's not that Greenville necessarily has the problem worse. It's just that we find ourselves between two places that are already having a really difficult problem. Cool. You got a question?
I would say like my last slide, especially. I'll get back to it, but just like volunteering at these organizations, even like the soup kitchen. Me and my mom have gone a few times and helped out, but those places are booked up for like months with volunteers, which is like a good problem to have, obviously. But if you can get in like helping out at places like that, it's like a simple thing, but it really does go a long way of like helping feed these people who wouldn't be getting their food elsewhere. Yeah, just really helping out in the homeless shelters if you can. Again, with the kids, if you are doing something with that with your job, you can get certified and all that, and then like try to help out the kids since you would have that certification. Yeah, but yeah, 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 for sure. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So, like more broadly, like yeah, we last semester we worked with Project Host over in Greenville. They do a lot of dynamic stuff where it's not yes it's a soup kitchen, but they're also getting people training for cooking and whatever, get them jobs and whatnot. And it's the whole teach a man to fish thing, right? You can give a man a fish, teach him better. It just takes a lot more time on that kind of thing. Also, I'll throw in there, as y'all disperse around, well, like who am I kidding? Y'all are sticking around here. But as y'all like go, okay, but as y'all disperse, as y'all go on to bigger and better things, like as your Bible teacher, I feel obligated to put a plug in here for your church, the church that you hopefully plug into and get involved in, because you're going to need that community, as someone tried to teach you earlier. Um, Churches are just a really good way of vetting. If you care about these particular issues, one, it's a really good way of vetting a church. A church that doesn't really care about their local homeless community, I'm not sure
It's
I'd
not
like
a
to.
church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. He said, yeah, it's not a church because I mean, you see the issue here, right? But also, like one of the values of being in a good church that you trust the leadership of, which I get it is a bag of problems itself, is that they vet these types of organizations. I don't have the time or the resources to go around and see where my money or time is best spent helping this particular issue. But I have this organization called a church that has lots of experience with other organizations in the area. And hey, if my church is helping out, then I can help out, right? It's just one of those things that like Christians already do a pretty good job of organizing along these lines. It's just I'm trying to get y'all to recognize like let's do more. There's no way like it's a bad thing to just do more of it, right?
So yeah, I get you. Yeah. Hmm. I think it's extremely inhumane, you know, to see these people that are struggling and they need a place to go, then like make it to where they can't even sit on a bench. I mean, I don't know, but if they need to be pushed out of the city or wherever they're at for like different reasons, I understand that. I guess you can't really put everyone in like a house, you know, like there's so many layers into that question. I don't know. I don't even know what I think about that, honestly.
And that's the good the social planet, the social work,
Yeah.
the city planning stuff. Like every once in a while, I'll drop one of these really mundane, secular thing jobs that people have, where it's like, this is the good work that you're doing. You're trying to make a city capable of taking care of people. And okay, Bible teacher hat back on real quick. Something that I've personally been trying to get better at. When you're walking through the street and you see a homeless person sitting over in a corner, do a test. Test yourself. Are you more concerned about nobody wants that homeless person in the corner? Can we just go ahead and say it? Nobody wants that homeless person in the corner. Do you not want that homeless person in the corner because you don't want to have to look at a homeless person in the corner? Or do you not want them in that corner because they need to be somewhere where they're warm and taken care of and healthy? In other words, do you want your life to be easier or do you want their life to be better? So, Jesus followers, those of us who claim the name of Christ, you know what the answer should be. So check yourself. Check yourself next time you're walking downtown. Nobody wants to see them there, but because it makes you uncomfortable, or but because you want them to get help. Really significant. Like that's that internal question, the difference between someone who's following Jesus and not.
What were you gonna say, Will? I have no idea. I only looked into America. That's a great question, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like the things that we do, it's not really homelessness reaching, but like the things that we've done with the school. Like I know you've gone on like a mission trip and stuff. I think that's really big. You know, like bringing Christianity out there and stuff like that. It gives them hope. You know, hope is a huge thing that people who are in impoverished areas they need to have. But yeah, that's really the best that I have for you. I mean, there's obviously always more that we can be doing, but I think we do a good job at reaching out. I really do, especially coming from East Side and stuff. A lot of times people here will be like, we don't show Christianity and stuff like as much as we need to, but coming from like a school like that and then coming here, I see a lot. Like even in here, like almost everyone acts like they're trying to follow Jesus and act like Jesus every single day. It's like really nice to see that. I think the school does do a good job at it. Be wrong, but from what I've seen, I really, yeah, I do think we do a pretty solid job at it.
Anybody else?
Relating to what this is, have you found like any
That's actually really good. That's really good. I didn't look into that. No, I hope that it is, but that was another thing. Whenever I did look into it, most of the sexual abuse and stuff, it was coming from inside of the homeless community, which just it sucks. But people even make jokes about like homeless people and like HIV and like all these different diseases that they carry. A lot of it is not wanted, so that's really like a pretty rough truth of it. But I'm sure there is a lot of sexual abuse and stuff that does come from within those shelters. But I am hoping that it's better than just being on the streets. Good question though.
I had done sexual abuse
Yeah,
and really,
that would make sense.
really bad to the point where they would literally rather take their chances.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
Well,
I mean,
What's your answer?
Kind of a similar situation with foster care systems.
Yeah.
Where even their foster care system, where they're keeping you not is almost equally as unsafe as just
Right. Yes. That's why another thing with the foster care, I think it's a huge deal for like us as Christians. As we get older, we obviously want to have our own kids and everything, but there's also other kids that need just as much chance and opportunity that we all had growing up. So I think it's very important to bring them into a stable household.
Let me wrap it up. I'm sorry. Somebody else.
I think it's easier to like go with the church and stuff. It would be great to go on your own to help out, and do all those different things. Again, you probably will need a degree to actually like run a place like that. But going with your church, it's a lot more people. It's like a group of people. Then it's like you have a name on it too. It's not just like a random person. It's like we'd be like Rocky Creek Church, like it's coming to help out with blah blah. It's more official. I think either way is great. Helping out as much as you can. So, yeah, I can't imagine that they are, honestly. And again, a lot of the homeless people aren't they're really not looked at like they're people. So once they're out on the streets, it's not really we think it's not our issue, not our problem. Even like police officers, no hate if you're gonna do that, but a lot of them will look over these homeless people, just because they know they're gonna be on drugs. They know that sex is gonna be running rampant through these people, and so they just it's not that they don't care, but they don't really have the time to look at these people because they are already looked at as less than.
Let's give Sophia a round.